indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right. Before we begin, are there any changes or modifications to the agenda as it is?
Mr. Chairman, I have none.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Special presentations and appearances. Message from Lakewood Association, Larry Moreland.
Mr. Chair and Supervisors, Mr. David, I'm Larry Moreland, President of the Board of Directors for Lake of the Woods. I was here last year in the same capacity and was privileged enough to be elected president for a second year for our group. And so I first want to welcome you to Lake of the Woods and to thank you for scheduling one of your board meetings here. We really appreciate the opportunity to see you all at work, and for people here at Lake of the Woods, it's a little easier for them to join us. We congratulate Jim and Mark on their tough re-elections, and glad to see them back on the board. And we attribute that, of course, to the fine job you're doing, and so you didn't have that opposition. We are always pleased that Supervisor Lee Frame comes to our monthly meetings and keeps us informed of what's going on in the county and what topics are before the Board of Supervisors. That really helps us a lot, and we appreciate that. Briefly to update you on just a few things that we've been doing. We recently adopted our Miller-Dodson Reserve Replacement Report for our budgeting and planning purposes, and that's like 752 items, which is a total of about $60 million to pay for over the 40-year period of the study. And it called for a little almost $2.3 million annually to support that. Well, that turns into about $221 per lot in the assessment increase. And with hard work by the staff and the board of directors, we were able to drop that number down considerably and to get it down to about $1.6 million and $61, at least at this point, and added to the assessment. So that was a lot of work that we've been doing most recently. We are currently, for it might be of interest, converting some of our tennis courts into pickleball courts to accommodate the growing sport of pickleball. It's growing leaps and bounds here in the lake, and so that should be done and ready for use within the next 4 to 6 weeks. So we are very pleased with that. As we are working on our current year budget, I think another item of interest is it does contain provisions for building a dog park within Lake of the Woods. And this will allow us to work with our Happy Tails Dog Club as we establish a facility for them to use, which will be state of the art. So we're very happy with that. And of course, the elephant in the room that we're working on is CARC, our clubhouse area recreational complex. We've had 3 town halls, numerous meetings, 2 ad hoc committees, and things going on this. And we anticipate approaching the county in the next 30 days seeking permits for this project. The project does consist of a new fitness center, a new pool, somewhere between 50 and 20 ADA parking lots or spots within the point area, bathrooms for the beach, and some recreational facilities to replace the tennis court or the basketball courts and that are out here on this point. So this is a multifaceted project. It's not just a pool. We think competitive bidding on this will start in February and construction sometime in March or April, hopefully opening in time for the 2019 swim season. The beginning estimates for this project were over $7.3 million, but hard work by board members and staff again, we're now working with an estimate of $5 million, but we will wait to get our construction documents and know where all of this is actually going to fall out, but it's been a lot of work by the board. In closing, because I know you have a full agenda, as to our interest in what you're doing, let's say we're always interested in GWAP. I've been impressed with the work that the county has done with the GWAP project and how it keeps moving along, and you look at all the different aspects of that and how it's going to affect the county, and we are very interested. We're also trying to keep up with broadband, as that is something else that we see could be a great benefit, not only to the county, but also to Lake of the Woods, and we know that's in the very embryonic stages, and I know they're working with the schools to try to get that started first, and so we're very appreciative of that. And then any efforts on expansion of roads surrounding Lake of the Woods, we're always interested in that. We appreciate all the Lakes of the Woods people who are on your board and others in here, Jim's on school board, and we just think you guys are doing a great job. And I always, Superintendent Tanner, I think, having a former background on a school board for 2 terms, I appreciate the work that goes on with there. We want to thank you for your public service, for all your hard work, and for the representation of the citizens of Orange County that you bring to each one of these meetings. I commented earlier to somebody that it was always good to see this group work because they work together, and you don't always find that, and you guys do a wonderful job with that. So again, welcome. And we'll see you later for dinner. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, next we have the Virginia Department of Transportation quarterly update. Alan Saunders.
Right. Chairman Goodwin, members of the board, good evening. My name is Alan Saunders. I'm the resident engineer with the Louisa Residency for the Virginia Department of Transportation. Here tonight for your quarterly update, I'm going to quickly review through our latest monthly report that we provided, hit some highlights, and then address any questions you may have. The first item in our monthly report are the fatalities, and I really regret to share that we've recorded 5 additional fatalities since the last update. In several instances, the motor has crossed over the center line, and we've had a focus on that across our entire district as far as providing additional center line rumble stripes that may help control some of the distracted drivers who are swaying from one lane to the other. But we're continuing to monitor each of these locations, and if we identify additional safety improvements, we'll implement them as soon as we can. The project updates. First project, the Route 635 Greenwood Road Bridge Replacement Project. This one has been in the secondary 6-year plan for several years. It's finally received sufficient funding to move forward. The goal is to replace the existing 1-lane structure in kind, and the advertisement target for a construction contract is late 2019. Route 608, Meadow Road Rural Rustic Project, we're going to advance that in the schedule. We're going to do the preliminary engineering and environmental coordination this winter and begin work in the spring, later in the spring of 2018, as soon as our resources are available. Route 602, Old Office Road, we too plan to begin that, even though it's several years out in the secondary 6-year plan. We plan to go ahead and begin the preliminary engineering and environmental work on that this winter and have that project shelf ready. So as soon as the resources and the funding are available, we'll advance that work, working from east to west. Route 630, Matthews Mill Road, we also too plan to do the preliminary engineering and environmental work on that project over the winter. So that one is too shovel ready, up on the shelf, ready to go. The Route 3 and 20 intersection safety improvements. We've got grading, adding offset turn lanes and new signals at that intersection. The work with the new signals, that's going to go first. The motorists should be able to begin seeing that in probably midsummer, although our crews are going to be out there stockpiling material in the median. And unfortunately, we have to move your Gateway County sign while we're working in that area, so we'll find a good temp location a little bit further west from there and take good care of it while we're working on that project. Route 2231 Roundabout in Old Somerset, that project is advancing on schedule. The goal is to hold a public hearing in July of 2018. VDOT traffic engineers are evaluating short-term safety improvements that may help us bridge the gap between now and when we do go to construction in 2020, just to see if we can slow traffic down through that section. Projects under construction. I'm very thankful to report that Marquee Road, Route 669, is complete. We have a few minor punch list items to address, and we're still working on some of the shoulder stone, but the contractor did a really good job, and we're very thankful for the community involvement we had. That was very special, and it really helped the project go very smoothly. VDOT's project engineer, Andrew Scott, did a really great job delivering that in a very unique way where VDOT served as the construction manager. So that worked out really well. Route 606, Catharpin Road, Rural Rustic, that work is underway. So VDOT contractors will continue to perform grading and drainage improvements through the fall and into the winter. As the weather permits, our goal is to hard surface that later next spring after the traffic has had sufficient time to compact that road very well. Route 603, again, Indiantown Road, we're underway. VDOT crews will slowly begin working their way east to west. And now that they're finishing up their mowing cycles, you'll see them out there more frequently. And our goal is working from Governor Almond all the way to Lewistown. And we're going to try to hard surface that too as soon as we can next spring. I did mention the rumble stripes on primaries. That's an additional roadway project that we're going to be working on throughout all 9 of our counties within the Culpeper District. Resurfacing projects. Apart from the pavement markings and some minor punch list items, the 27 resurfacing projects are complete. We plan to significantly increase the resurfacing mileage in Orange in 2018 from 25.7 miles to 105.52 miles of resurfacing. So we're really excited about improving the condition of some of our secondary roads next year. The traffic engineering studies, we have several. A couple that I did want to note is we continue to monitor both the signal performance, and we have an interim plan too on 20 and 522 for some intersection improvements there. Route 15, not just north of Gordonsville where we witnessed the fatality right there in front of Inwood Restaurant, but we're also looking at some traffic improvements around the traffic circle there in town that we've been working with Ms. Kendall in the town of Gordonsville on those improvements. And again, we do plan to meet out on 20 and 231 intersection with our traffic engineers to try to identify some interim improvements between now and the roundabout that we can deploy sooner. Orange County crews, our VDOT crews in Gordonsville and Roseville area headquarters responded to 252 work orders so far this fiscal year. So those guys, in addition to working in on the rural rustic projects, have really been hopping, and we're thankful for them. Chairman Goodwin, that's all I have for the report. Is there any questions? Are there any questions I can address?
When you're done, since you're so good, could you run down to Newport News and have those people fix the 17 miles of road?
I am very thankful to work in this community.
Chairman, I actually have a comment, if I might. Alan mentioned the Marquee Road Route 669 project is complete, and that was a very successful project. I would really like to point out, VDOT took the time to have a community meeting with the citizens that live along that road one evening. Fairly good attendance, a lot of questions, a lot of issues, talking about drainage and these kind of things. And that went a long way in sort of managing expectations, coordinating with people for the lane closures, and in some cases, the complete shutdown of the road because there were culverts that had to be replaced and these kind of things. So there was a significant disruption, but the community, I think, understood it, supported it, and the extra effort and time you guys took to really work directly with the citizens and answer their questions. I know they stopped you and the crews almost on a daily basis with questions, but it turned into a neighborhood project, and the neighborhood was engaged and involved, and I just want to compliment you and your crews and Andrew and all those involved. That's the way it should be done, and the result shows. So,
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
the model we need to follow.
It is. And it's obviously going across the county because I've dealt with Mr. Saunders on a couple of issues, one pretty major one, and we went out and met with the property owners, and they went from having totally incorrect vision of what was happening to very timely, up to date, and got some more of the community involved, just like you said, and this was just a short meeting that we had. So once again, it is wonderful having your residency open and having you down there.
Well, we appreciate you facilitating those interactions. That's a big help for us.
Alan, on the 2231 roundabout, you've got December 2020. Is that started construction, or is it started? Yeah, what's going to happen?
That's the ad. In the fall of 2020, the project will be advertised for construction. I don't anticipate construction beginning until early the following year. 2021. That is advertised, correct.
And so you anticipate right away, all right away issues being dealt with before
In 2019.
2019?
The goal now is to go to design public hearing in July, and we'll review with the public the design concept. If the county and the public approve, we will advance and finalize the design, then begin right away in utility relocations throughout that intersection, and then advertise for construction. Yes, sir.
Anything else? Thank you, Alan.
Very good. Thank you. Good evening.
All right, next we have the update on the Piedmont Opportunity Corridor Council. Go Virginia Region 9. Ellen Coffin.
Is there a trick to getting the light on?
I think Susan, there's a little slide there. As Helen's getting ready, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you know, I represent our planning district on the Growth and Opportunity Council for Region 9, which is essentially Charlottesville, Nelson County, north of Fauquier County, Louisa, Fluvanna. This is a state initiative to bring regional collaboration around economic development. Through all that process, a pretty big plan has been put together, and Helen is making the rounds, and so invited her and arranged for her to come tonight to make the rounds to you all. But I've been briefing you on this, but this is a good opportunity to kind of wrap up where we are with the whole process. So that as a lead-in, Helen.
Great, well, thank you so much. So I'm Helen Coffin, president of the Central Virginia Partnership for Economic Development, and we are the lead support organization for Go Virginia in Region 9. So that's why I'm here tonight, and one good thing is Brian has served on the council faithfully, and so you do have an in-house resource, which makes it nice. The other person from Orange County who serves on the council is Stephen DeYoung with Lohman Corporation, just so you know you do have some representatives. So what is Go Virginia? This is something that General Assembly initiated at the request of some pretty heavy hitter private sector folks. And it's really about creating more high paying jobs and diversifying our economy around the Commonwealth. The idea is to incentivize business, education, and government collaborating together on economic development. So why are they doing that? Virginia needs strong private sector growth because of sequestration. We've taken some hits, and I'll show you a slide in a minute that shows that pretty vividly. The General Assembly believes that to get that diversity in regions, it requires collaboration, and that they must be a catalyst and partner, and that's why they decided to actually put some money into this thing. So essentially what's happened is that typically Virginia's been a leader in not trailing the U.S. But for the past number of years, you can see the blue line is below the gold line, which is not good. So Virginia hasn't been doing as well as we have historically, to put it simply. Essentially, and this is a report that GMU put together, essentially it shows that lower paying jobs contribute less to the gross state product. I think that makes sense to everyone. Leisure, hospitality services, retail trade contribute far less per job than manufacturing, IT, or financial services. So what's happened over the past 8 or so years is that although we've created 42,000 new jobs in the Commonwealth, because they've been on the lower end of that scale, or the upper part of the list I just showed you, versus the bottom part, the average GSP value has decreased considerably to the tune of a total GSP value of negative $6 billion. So a really significant decrease. That's why the General Assembly cares about this. So the regional boundaries, we've got 9 Go Virginia regions. We are Region 9. We've called ourselves the Piedmont Opportunity Corridor. We are all of planning districts 9 and 10, so it's really almost the same territory as the Central Virginia Partnership, with the exception of Fauquier and Rappahannock are in addition to the partnership counties, but they are all part of our Piedmont Workforce Network workforce region. So we're very lucky, unlike some of these other regions. We were talking to Region 2 earlier today, and they have 3 regional economic development groups in their region. So we're very lucky that ours is really succinct. We're all used to working together for the most part, and it's been an easier transition than for some. So Region Council 9, I mentioned that Brian David, whatever your name is. And you know I know you.
Oh, I know.
And Stephen DeYoung, our Orange County representatives. Brian Cole from LexisNexis, who's a former partnership past chair. is the chairman, and Tom Click in Louisa County with Patriot Illumin is the vice chair. There are 12 private sector members and 11 public sector. So the reason I show you the timeline, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about it, but this really started just last October. The initial meeting of the Go Virginia Board was October 12th. So it's only been about a year, and a lot has happened since then. In March, all of the 9 regional councils were certified, the work plans and budgets were approved, and the regional plans were funded. So this summer, we did a ton of work to do an economic growth and diversification plan, and I think many of you participated in some of the interviews, focus groups, 2 economic development summits, and then an unveiling of the plan in September. The first per capita projects will be approved at the December 12th state board meeting. We don't even have a deadline until, I just forgot what it was, we just set it, until about mid-December for our regional council. So we're trailing that timeline. You guys, anybody that has an idea has plenty of time to still put together a proposal. 2 pots of money are available. One is per capita, so that's money about, you can see on the right-hand side, $796,000 is our total amount. We got a per capita number of about $546,000. We're adding $250,000 from another pot to that, so have just about $800,000. That's just for our region. So that's matching funds available for economic development collaborative projects in our region. There also is a statewide competitive pot of $11.3 million for projects that are interregional. So if our region wants to work together with Region 2, like I was talking to earlier today, that would be eligible for larger pots of money. Larger amounts of money. Qualifying projects. So there, I gave each of the supervisors a packet that includes the application form. We have a pre-application at govirginia9.org, gives you more information, but it has to lead to the creation of higher paying jobs or capacity building for those jobs. It must address opportunities and priorities in the industry sectors identified in our Growth and Opportunity Plan, which is also on the govirginia9.org website. Involve 2 or more localities, 1-to-1 matching funds, so 100% match. Participating localities, and this is one of the reasons I'm here tonight, is be sure the supervisors and the community know this, unless at least half of the region's population is participating, which is 211,000, and that is really beyond what even Planning District 9 can do all by itself. $50,000 must be contributed up to projects for up to $250,000, and 20% for projects over that amount from the localities. So it's very important that the elected officials understand that and really think seriously about what they're interested in funding and what advances Orange County's own priorities. One of the things that's neat about that is we're trying our best to put together some collaborative projects with many partners throughout the region so that you have some things to react to. But one nice thing about the pre-application process is as people start asking you questions about, we'd like to talk to you about funding our project or being a partner in our project, you can simply say, have you filled out a pre-application form at govirginia9.org? And if they say no, you can say, please do that first and be sure it qualifies. And if they say yes, just ask, did it qualify for funds? Because that way, you're not spending a lot of time developing a project that doesn't even qualify for Go Virginia. It just simply doesn't fund everything. So our areas are talent development or workforce development, growing existing business. There's some broadband opportunity there, startup innovation, entrepreneurship, and site readiness. In the target markets, very similar to our target markets released in 2012. These aren't really new to you all. There's some nuances there, but you're pretty familiar with those. So this really doesn't impact tourism, quality of life projects. Funding isn't eligible for marketing examples, so there's some exclusions. Potential projects, I just gave you this slide, so as you guys think about what might be potential projects, we're sharing some with you. I know Brian's already been talked to about a couple of different things, but I've heard talk of cybersecurity. We've heard talk of some other workforce type projects. There's some site readiness opportunities we think as part of this. The Thomas E. Lee Park was included in some of the site evaluation, and we think there's some things we can do to help advance that site readiness of that particular site. Grants can't be used for a number of things. Construction is one. If it's road construction into Thomas E. Lee Park, for example, that would qualify, but just general road improvements like the DOT was talking about earlier do not qualify for funds. Scoring guidelines, again, just so you have it, they care about economic impact. Will this project make a difference? How many participating localities are involved? How likely is it to be able to be implemented? And then sustainability, once the funding goes away, what's going to happen next? Is there a plan for continuing whatever work's being proposed? Finally, just submit an application at govirginia9.org. Shannon Holland and myself, I've got a slide with our contact information is on that. We're happy to answer any questions. We've been brainstorming a lot with folks. We're glad to do that. After you are approved for a pre-application, again, in your packet, there's a full application. It looks like a typical Department of Housing and Community Development application. Do you know what that means? Cumbersome, a little burdensome, really detailed. We, again, have technical support. Shannon Holland, in particular, is willing to help folks. If you look at return on investment, you don't know really you pitch this project's return on investment, we're happy to help with that. We've been learning a lot about how to do that, so we're glad to do that. Then full applications are submitted to the Regional Council 9. Assuming they're approved there, then they go to the State Board. And we're just about ready to release all those dates and deadlines so people see that. But again, there's still plenty of time. Any interregional project available for the competitive funds must get approval from each of the regional councils. So if there's a statewide project, all 9 regional councils would have to approve that and their participation in it. Last but not least, govirginia9.org. There's the arrow points to the pre-application. It's really a simple format, maybe a little too simple, but we really just want to get people's ideas, make sure they qualify before they go to a bunch of work. And then my contact information is enclosed. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes.
I have a question. Is it possible to form a collaboration that includes, let's say, the community college, maybe the school system, as well as local government and or private? I mean, I don't quite understand where the lines are drawn as to the eligible participant community. I mean, is it open to any combinations?
I'll give you an example. And I don't think this is premature, and if it is, just tell them I apologize. But the community college is looking at something that would cover their whole territory. And so that might be a project that they'd ask for Region 9 funds and also I can't remember the number, Fredericksburg region funds, I think it's 5, but I may be wrong, and have us both participate, not for competitive funds, potentially it could be, we're not sure how large it is yet. And so there's lots of opportunity for cross-collaboration. In fact, we were talking to the Virginia Tech folks today about what could our region do with their large region, which is Lynchburg, Blacksburg, and Roanoke. It's very large. But could we do something with them? We've also talked to UVA-wise with having UVA in our region. Is there some way to bring in Southwest Virginia? Because frankly, that's fundable. People are going to be excited about something like that. So we've been looking at, of course, the project idea is probably the key, but how can we cross lines and do that kind of thing?
If I could, Mr. White, members of the board, Helen, maybe bring it down to back to Mr. White's question. We've had some pretty high level, and I want to make it more pretty amorphous discussions. Dr. Jan Gulletson, president of Germanna Community College, Dr. Tanner, and myself. I really think the community college is the platform for workforce development to pursue some of these funds. I think our conversations are such that it wouldn't be really viable for us to try to rush to get something together in time for this deadline in December. But I think by the time next year rolls around, we should have something that you all will have an opportunity to vet, other jurisdictions, school boards, and so forth. And I think there are some real good opportunities on a regional collaboration using the community college service area as our regional platform and focusing on workforce development.
Yeah, there'll be a December deadline, then the next one will probably be mid-February, so a lot more time. Any other questions? Well, anyway, if you hear folks interested, please encourage them to come talk to us. The other thing we're doing is trying to connect, if somebody's interested in entrepreneurship and they're in Fauquier, Orange, Culpeper, we're trying to connect them with folks that may be in Louisa, Fluvanna Green, and try to build bigger projects because we think that's what's going to be most appealing to the council. All right?
Okay.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Helen.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, I forgot to add one last special presentation
Oh,
that I've been asked by VACO to make.
okay.
I'd like to present Mr. Lee Frame, the Honorable Lee Frame, with a certificate of 10 years service in recognition. And Mr. Teal Goodwin, a similar recognition of 10 years service. VACO recognizes supervisors across the street.
That too.
That too, across the state for their years of service, so certainly congratulations. VACO stands for the Virginia Association of Counties.
Time flies when you're having fun. All right, move on then to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second, a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries 5-0. No new business, no old business. Department Director, Constitutional Officer report. Presentation of the 5-year financial forecast. Linda Bradley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, each year the Finance Department, in collaboration with other county departments, prepares a forecast to project revenues for the next upcoming 5-year period. The forecast serves as the first step in our budget development process for the upcoming fiscal year. So for us, that will be fiscal 19. The purpose of the forecast is to provide a preliminary view of the county's ability to meet its obligations and funding needs under a prescribed set of assumptions. For this forecast, assessed values for real estate and public service corporation real property were projected with an annual growth rate of 1%. And that is the average growth rate we have seen and the one that we used last year when working with Davenport for our planned debt service repayment plan for the 2016 bonds. For personal property, that includes automobiles, boats, and RVs, I used an estimated annual growth rate of 2.5%. And that seems to be growing a little faster than real estate. The majority of the other property tax categories, I used 1%. Other local taxes, which include things like sales tax, recordation taxes, meals tax, transient occupancy tax, those kind of taxes, utility tax is another one. That category plus the permits and fees category, which includes building permits, were projected with annual growth rates of 5% because since the economy has started to recover, those two categories have done a lot better, and they're actually showing the strongest growth of any of the general fund revenue categories. Most of the state revenue sources, including the state comp board reimbursements, were estimated using growth rates between 1 and 1.5%. They just have not been growing in recent years. The Children's Services Act is an exception to that. Our reimbursements from the state were adjusted. I used the amended budget for FY17, which was total CSA expenditures of about $3.1 million. And because we are increasing our expenditures, then our reimbursement from the state would increase as well. So I used the 3.1 in expenditures, which results in a state reimbursement of about 1.6 million for the FY19 year, and beyond that, used 5% increases for those reimbursements, because as you know, we've been seeing a tremendous increase in the use of that program. Last year, as part of the 2016 bond issue, we did have a financing plan presented by Davenport in October, and we used some of our excess general fund reserves to fund a combination of capital projects and debt service to try to help us bridge the gap. This is using savings to use pay-as-you-go financing for some capital, and also to supplement our regular general fund contribution for debt service. So FY19 represents the last year that we would be using that excess general fund balance, and there's a total of $932,514. About 160 of that will go to offset debt service, and the remainder is for specific capital projects. Financing proceeds are also included in the forecast, and they are based on the proposed FY19 CIP that was distributed at our last meeting. You'll see if you look in the capital projects fund or the landfill fund, there are financing proceeds in the appropriate years that would correspond to the proposed projects in the CIP. This slide is just to show the whole general property tax category, and really just to show how very flat it is. We just are not experiencing a lot of growth in that area. And of course, our next general reassessment will be 2020. So we have one more year under the current reassessments for FY19, and then beyond that, we'll see what the reassessment does. But as you know, we have to roll our tax rate back. If the values increase, we'll roll our tax rate back to the equalized rate before we consider adjusting it based on expenditures or other factors that might come into play.
Linda, question on that. The underlying assumption, I guess, with the real estate portion of that is that except for new construction or additions and other improvements, it stays completely flat, but it's not a reassessment year. So that 1% that you were assuming is all, I take it, either new construction or additions and
Right.
those kind of things. So it's all improvement. It's not the real property itself. It's an improvement
That's
number.
true.
Is that correct? Okay.
And I might say that recently the state did come out with their report on true property values. And they were showing our actual sales to our assessment ratio at about 92%. So that's another indicator that we do need to have a reassessment. We're right on target for that. But according to their report, they are seeing the sales numbers higher than our current assessed values.
But it's important to remember that a reassessment does not increase our revenue.
No.
This particular slide shows the other revenue categories within the general fund, or some of the more important ones. And you can see that other local taxes category there in the blue is probably the next largest category in terms of dollars in the general fund, other than property taxes. And that one is performing better at about 5% a year. Just as a baseline, since this is the kickoff of our budget season for 19, I wanted to remind everybody that the FY18 budget was adopted using about $648,000 in fund balance. And that was for the Central Virginia Regional Jails increase, which was much larger than normal. It was about $757,000. So in our use of reserve policy that the board adopted, it does say we can use fund balance during an emergency or, during periods of economic uncertainty or budget adversity, and we felt like this was a situation that called for the use of fund balance. However, it does mean that we've used $648,000 in reserves to fund what would be probably recurring expenditures. So as we're going into the 19 budget, we need to make up $648,000 in new revenue before we have actual new revenue to put against new expenditures in FY19, if that makes sense.
Brent, how much is our actual contribution to the jail? I know the 750,000 increase, what's the actual contribution?
Right. It's about $2 million. I don't have the exact number, but roughly $2 million. Mm-hmm.
And that compensates the jail for the bed days that Orange County uses with our inmates, either pre-trial or post-trial, that are less than 2 years sentence.
What's that, about 6 cents on the tax rate?
Using $3.80 per 1 cent.
More like about 5 cents.
Right.
Yeah.
5.5 cents on the tax rate, just to fund the jail.
So this is just an overview of the 5 years compared to the current year budget for revenues. And you can see that for fiscal year 19, in grand total for the general fund, we're looking at new revenue of about 1.2. But keep in mind that 650,000 of that really goes to offset expenditures that are built into the 18 budget. From there on, from 19 on, it runs at about $1 million a year. So that's just a bird's eye view of the revenue picture. And that'll continue to be refined, as we get more information from the state and other sources on the actual revenue. But as far as property taxes go, we do have the actual billing numbers at this time for 2017. So there's a little part of the property tax that's still estimated, but the majority of that is a pretty good number. Just in conclusion, continuing to avoid the use of fund balance for recurring expenditures will strengthen the county's financial position. And we did see that firsthand last year. As you know, we got a bond upgrade from A plus to AA. And so one of the main things that the bond rating agencies were interested in was, how do we use fund balance? Do we have a policy? Are we sticking to our policy? And so we're always staying very conscious of how we use our reserves. And also just to remember that the forecast is really only a starting point for our budget discussions, and it's not to be considered a preliminary budget presentation. Are there any questions?
The jail is a good example of a discussion we need to have. I'm trying to remember all the contributing factors to that $650,000 surprise last year. I know part of it was just the fact that our sheriff is taking more people there to spend the night. Because it's a pay-as-you-go kind of situation. You buy a room when you're there. It's not spread like peanut butter. So.
Well, no, they don't buy a room. We buy a room.
Well, that's what right. A room is bought on their behalf, if you will. But as I recall, there was a portion of that was sort of replenishing of a reserve account or something like that. And so we need to, you know, as we trundle down this budgeting process, we really need to get a handle on that institution, and we have a very able-bodied representative there. I'm just sort of
Thank you.
a newly elected, I might say.
Able-bodied, not able-minded, believe me.
But as you can see, that's the kind of surprise that with essentially a 1% growth forecast of our revenue, you can't stand a lot of those surprises, or it takes the wheels off the wagon. And so,
And I believe we've addressed those surprises. And should we have another one, I think you will see a new administration up there, because they have been well informed as to how all 5 of the counties feel about it, because it affects all 5 counties within the jail authority. And I think we finally have it back on an even keel, which needed to be done. And hopefully we can move forward and bring it down a little bit instead of going up.
and the other one that I'm particularly concerned about that we've talked about before is the Child Protective Services. The opioid epidemic is absolutely wreaking havoc with that, because, I mean, if you haven't followed it very closely, what happens a lot of times when an arrest gets made in a home, there are children there, you know, infants in some cases, and obviously they have to be taken into some form of care that comes under that umbrella. And in many cases, it's both parents that are involved, and so all of a sudden, you know, there's another surprise that obviously we have, as a community, we have to deal with it, but it's a tremendous swing in terms of our budget planning, and the numbers I'm seeing, it's getting worse, not better.
It is.
Well, quite actually, when Lee and I started, the budget was 538,000. And now it's 2.
2 million.
Yes, so that's
So they're
400% over 10 years. It's
I'm-
unsustainable.
you know, there's work to be done, I think, in some of these big swing programs that we have to really get a handle on going forward. So, especially with the revenue, relatively flat revenue projection, although our local economy, Glenda talked about the sales tax growth and even vehicles and these kind of things. I mean, that's a sign that the economy is beginning to chug along locally. We're doing well, but you know, it's an insufficient part of the revenue stream at this point. And of course, there's the uncertainty about what the state's going to do with respect to all of their mandates that they give us, as well as support for the schools and the others. And so it's going to be a fun year budgeting.
I'm not sure I'd call it fun.
That was, yeah. I had another word in mind, but
When you do the projection of 1%, is that based off of actuals, or is that based off of what was budgeted?
For the property tax category,
Well, for any of them.
for the property tax category, I do update it with the actual billing. That's just recently gone out, the taxes that will be due on December 5th. So that's why I say that number I feel pretty strong about that number being a good number to start with. The only part of that are like tax abatements and that sort of thing that I'm still having to estimate at this point for the current year. So I'm basing the 1% off what I know for this year, 419. So I did not go back to the budget projection and add 1%. I actually took the actual, at least as close to an actual as I can get at this point.
And refresh my memory now, the FY18 tax collections are December and then next June, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So this projection is based on sort of half,
Right.
and so a lot of things could happen in between them.
Right, because the 1% is applied to that next June. Yes.
Anything else? Thank you, Glenn. Okay. No county attorney report, so county administrator report. Mr. David.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I have three items for you tonight, and I'll run them through given the hours. Typically, you all will have a joint meeting with the Economic Development Authority in the fall. Because of our new director, Mr. Phil Gear, coming on board in August, he and I felt it was best that we delay this joint meeting until the spring or after the first of the year, until he's had a chance to get acclimated and can bring together a meaningful work session for the board and the EDA. So just wanted to make you aware that we will have a joint meeting, but it's not typically in the fall. It'll be sometime in late winter, early spring.
Brian, I'm just stick my word in and say that this type of meeting ideally should, in my opinion, should be about the board and the EDA getting to understand each other a little better and understand the priorities. And I would like to see that be more of a focus of these type of meetings, rather than, and I don't mean this in any way to be offensive, but a staff dog and pony show. And I don't mean that to be offensive. I'm not accusing you or Phil either one of doing that, but I think too often these kind of things, staff sort of works it up, and the EDA sits there and the board sits there and they all nod and go home.
Right.
And it seems to me it would be much more useful if both the authority and the board had some input into what we're actually going to be doing at the meeting.
Okay.
So that we sort of understand each other going forward instead of sort of operating in our own little hermetically sealed areas.
Very good, and you know, this is y'all's joint meeting, and so part of this is trying to figure out what is meaningful for both bodies. I think one of the times we had a joint meeting was actually here at Lake of the Woods. We had a work session environment where there was some strategic planning going on between the board and the EDA. I think given since Mr. Miller is gone and now Mr. Gear's here, and the strategic plan was developed, I think it's a prime opportunity to revisit that and maybe have the two bodies work together in a kind of an update or a strategic, where we're in more of a receive mode than a send mode. So I can make that happen. That's good call. All right. Next item I have is an update on the Germanna Wilderness Area Plan. I'm pleased to report, gentlemen, that on October 26th at Locust Grove Middle School, Michael Baker International, it's a international actually design firm, engineering firm, had a first report of a corridor management study that they're doing for Route 3. The study area is between the Spotsylvania Orange Line there at Route 20 out to the Rapidan River there by Germanna Community College and Germanna Foundation. This is an extension of a similar management plan that this firm had prepared for VDOT from Interstate 95 to the Spotsylvania Orange County line. The purpose of this plan is to understand current conditions and then project those conditions over some time period, 20, 30, 40 years. And the idea is try to give the county some guidance and landowners along this corridor in the development community of how we might be able to manage the access to this. And I will quickly throw Central Park, that area, as kind of the poster child of what we're trying to avoid right now when there's not much development. And so how do you do that? How do you limit maybe curb cuts, stoplights, and what are the things that you can do to have people move around the Germanna Wilderness area with not really having to use Route 3? The premise of this is that Route 3, now that it's 4-lane to Culpeper, and if you look at 17 from, 29 there, up in Fauquier, Stafford to north 90 and 95 north of the Rappahannock River, a lot of that traffic will now start migrating south to avoid the pinch point at the Rappahannock River. And so that only is going to bring travel counts out here of through traffic. And so how do we keep this through traffic going through in an efficient way and not interfere interfere with local traffic? And so this plan came out. It's on our website under Germanna Wilderness Area Plan. It's a lot of detailed information. We're going to have another process with the Germanna Wilderness Area Plan Steering Committee, and a number of Lake of the Woods members on that steering committee, and then eventually having another town hall with the recommendations. We are getting this study from Virginia Department of Transportation, from the Richmond headquarters, at no cost to the county. Its value is about $150,000. So this is very good work that will help us start planning the transportation along this corridor for current, future residents, as well as an economic development advantage so that we can attract a business investment and create jobs along the corridor. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. There were about 30 to 40 people that attended that.
Okay. And then the legislative priorities?
Yes, sir. As you do each year, you develop legislative priorities for the upcoming General Assembly, and given last night's results, this will be a pretty active General Assembly session. I have prepared draft policies under the Children's Services Act, under workforce development, under broadband and wireless infrastructure. The wireless infrastructure policy that I developed was because of a draft bill that had been submitted to the Department of Legislative Services, and I'm not sure who the patron is, to essentially usurp local land use decision when it deals with certain types of wireless antennas, cell towers. And the industry has been moving pretty aggressively to remove local government land use decision-making, essentially usurping, preempting our zoning decision so that the industry can do all this by right, and localities and neighbors and such will have no say in it. I present this to you as a draft. The Virginia Association of Counties has their annual meeting this weekend. A number of board members are going, including myself. We feel that coming out of that, we may have some additional items that we may want to add or revise ones that we've done. My next time would be bringing this back at your December 5th meeting for adoption, and then distribution to Senator Reeves and Delegate Freitas for their information and use during the upcoming session. With that, I'll look for some direction or input from board members.
There are two that are in the draft VACO proposals that I think that might be useful to incorporate into Orange County's recommendation. And one is with regard to the composite index. Because we have some of our land and land use, we don't get the full assessed valuation taxation on them. And but the full assessed valuation is what is used in determining the composite index. Composite index is a formula by which how much the state reimburses each locality for its school activity. And so that one is, because we have a fair amount of land and land use, it reduces our revenues, and that we think should be taken into account. So I would like to add that one. Another one that I think is of use that we might consider is the invasive species and noxious weeds. And there's a VACO recommendation to make sure that that is adequately funded to implement the Virginia Invasive Species Management Plan. That doesn't necessarily affect our lake, but local other waters around us, if they get invasive species, that increases the likelihood they might end up in our lake. So I think that those are two that I'd like to see added to the Orange County version. And finally, since the Chamber of Commerce is not going to have a legislative dinner today, this year, because of limited attendance at previous ones, I would think that maybe we should, at some point, meet directly with our two legislators to go over the ones that are important to Orange County.
Absolutely. I'll include these two VACO positions into the updated draft that I'll present to you at December 5th. Picking up on Mr. Frame's suggestion, perhaps Mr. Frame or maybe one other board member can accompany me. I'll arrange for meetings with Senator Reeves and Delegate Freitas to personally present this in person and walk them through in an informal way what the board's position is on all these issues. And we'll certainly do that before the holidays.
One other item, Brian, that I actually mentioned it a little while ago, you have proposed language with respect to the Children's Services Act. I think we should include in that essentially an emergency type of treatment because of the opioid crisis. That the state needs to recognize the impact that it's having statewide and particularly on localities, and treat it as an emergency as opposed to as a business as usual case when it comes to making funding decisions for that program.
I think Secretary Hazel is making a presentation at the VACO conference, and I'm sure he's going to be covering opioids. Maybe that's a time that one of us will mention that maybe the state ought to be taking a bigger bite out of that issue.
Absolutely. We can work that language into this position, and just so Children's Service Act deals with generally foster care of kids. This is a joint delivered service where children are removed either by the court or social services. Certainly the schools have a role in this. Right now, our foster care, I'm meeting with our social service director, as I do regularly, Crystal Hale, who just came on board here in August. I think our counts are around 50 to 60 children are now in foster care in the county, where historically our trends have been in the 20s and 30s. And a lot of this has its root basis in the opioid crisis, forcible removal. Parents have been committed to jail for offenses. And the numbers are pretty staggering on this. Also, one other thing back to the jail reminds me, child support. The jail judges will commit folks that have fallen behind on their child support. They then lose their job, they're in jail, the children have no custodial parent, and then they're removed. So Orange County is dealing with this type of cycle and circular process, and the numbers and the human toll is tragic enough, and then underlined by the cost to the county. So I'll certainly work this up, and I think Secretary Hazel will probably have some good language we can put in.
And I know that there are a number of foster families we need more, Lions had a picnic with some of the foster families a month or so ago, and got to talk to some of them. Those people have got their place in heaven.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? All right, any board comment?
Just a joint congratulations to our
Winners?
winners. Welcome back.
Tough fought races.
Yes. Thank you.
With the weather yesterday, we're both glad it is.
You might go and look and just see who the write-ins were.
I believe that Daffy and Mickey had many.
Yeah, I think they're,
Well, I noticed the last time I did it, I looked at the write-ins, and there were at least two that said anybody but Frame.
yeah.
Two of mine were anybody but. They didn't really care.
I did that a couple of years ago, and there were, most of them looked like people just voted for family members and that sort of thing. But yeah, there was an anybody but Mark Johnson.
And I can assure you, there were probably.
So we're not universally about
Anybody
it.
but Crozier votes.
Anybody but came in second.
Yes.
I have a question to ask of the audience here. The blinking yellow light out here, is that working well? Seemed to work well when I came in. It was the first time I've been through it since it was installed. Seemed to work well. The only problem is, one fellow got out in the middle of the intersection, and then he couldn't tell the light had turned green, so. So you may want to not pull forward so far as you can.
The cycling of the light seems to be a little strange sometimes. It switches to yellow or green. Sometimes it switches to yellow when it turns to green.
Right, okay, yeah.
I'd also like to thank VDOT for the fact that when the ambulances and the fire trucks want to go out, the lights turn green for us.
Good. All right. Any question on the informational items? Hearing none, any appointments to boards, commissions, or committees? All right, the calendar is given consideration to schedule a public hearing for SUP 1706 on the planning commission, November 2nd, that's already gone.
December 5th, Mr. Chairman. I believe December 5th.
December 5th. Oh, yes. All right. Is that okay with everyone?
Good.
All right.
Is that the solar farm?
Yes, sir.
Which one, is that the one that is?
Yes, sir.
You guys, you had your public hearing already, planning? We'll talk.
Okay. It's a little past 7, so we do the public comment. Anyone signed up?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'm not going to hit that thing. We'll just agree that no public comment. Well, at that point then, we're set to recess for dinner with the Lake Woods Board. And then I assume we'll do closed meeting after that? Yes. Okay. All right, we're in recess.